I cooked this ogbono soup without seasoning cubes. Believe me when I say it tastes as good as it looks. To prepare this ogbono soup, I used the following ingredients: oven-dried mackerel, shrimps, stockfish that I had soaked overnight in water, ground ogbono, dehydrated snails that I soaked in water overnight, cow tripe, crayfish, onions, pepper, sweet pepper, dried mangala fish, uziza seeds, and defrosted fresh okazi. A key part of cooking without seasoning cubes is extracting the natural flavors from the ingredients one is using. I do this by preparing a stock. I start with the ingredients that take the longest to cook. In this case, the tripe and the stockfish. I allowed this to cook for a while before adding the rehydrated snails. If I were cooking with fresh snails, they wouldn't be added this early. I allowed this to boil and soften while I prepped other ingredients. The pepper and chopped onions were added early in the process to contribute to the flavor of not just the soup, but the proteins being boiled. I washed and pounded the uziza seeds and also the crayfish. Who else is so particular about not using crayfish powder? Crayfish, as bought from Nigerian markets, always tends to be dirty. I always pick and wash mine before adding to foods.
Which type?
Ogbono. I just do the bit so all the board. At this point, I added the dried mangala to the boiling stock. Legudu that stock. I also added the salt and the crayfish. This seemingly elaborate cooking process is just to prepare the seasoning for my soup. I checked at intervals to see if the proteins in the stock were well cooked, mainly the snail and the tripe, as the stockfish was already softened by soaking. When I was satisfied that my stock was tasty enough and the proteins were cooked enough, I started making the soup. I started with pouring palm oil into a cooking pot and added the ogbono, making sure the lumps were properly dissolved in the oil before adding liquid to the pot. I don't like ogbono that draws so much, so I use slight heat for this stage. I was meant to understand that heat cuts the drawing. I added the water gradually while stirring. I feel ogbono is one soup that involves a lot of stirring. Because I didn't use a lot of water to make my stock, I needed to use extra water at this stage. If I had used a lot of water in the stock, then the stock alone might have been enough for my soup. I added my stock and covered the pot. There is this Nigerian chef and content creator that is fond of saying, cover it, uncover it in his cooking videos, that it has gotten into my head, and I remember that whenever I am cooking and covering or uncovering my pot. As my soup boiled, I added the chopped sweet pepper. I use this not just for the sweet taste, but for the red dots it adds to the soup, more like a decoration. Then I added my mackerel. Mackerel comes this late, else it will scatter in the soup. I love to get little bits of everything in my soup. I turn the soup frequently to prevent it from burning. Ogbono burns easily, even while cooked at medium heat. Shrimps are usually among the last things I add to my food because they are not meant to be cooked for so long, else they become tough and rubbery. Biko, tell me why this soup will not be delicious without seasoning cubes. At this point in my cooking, I felt my soup tasted fine and was almost ready, so I added the okazi, stirred, allowed to boil, and my delicious ogbono soup was ready.